My name is Brian. I'm here with my partners Jasmine, Tyler, and Gabby, and we are here to present on the Little League World Series of Baseball. So, a little bit about the history of the Little League World Series. The Little League Baseball and Softball is the parent organization that puts on the tournament every year. It was founded in 1939, and it was mainly teams from Pennsylvania at the time. The first team outside of Pennsylvania joined in 1947, and that team was from New Jersey. The tournament began 8 years later in 1947, the same year that the team from New Jersey joined. It was originally named the National Little League Tournament, but it was later changed to resemble the MLB's World Series because they were trying to kind of connect the two and make it seem like a bigger deal, make it seem bigger for the players themselves, and really create that parallel with the highest level. The first tournament featured 12 teams. They were most of the known Little League teams at the time, and they were mostly teams from Pennsylvania because, like I said, only one team in the entire organization was from outside of Pennsylvania, and that was from New Jersey. Flash forward to today, Little League has roughly 2.6 million players worldwide, so a big difference between the 12 teams that we started out with. And in history, 45 players have played in both the Little League World Series and made it to the MLB. So it's kind of like foreshadowing to see the stars light up the Little League World Series fields and then work their way up to the MLB, and that number is growing. There's more and more players every few years that appear in there and then end up playing in the MLB. So some of the milestones throughout the Little League World Series history. In 1947, the first tournament, it was won by the Maynard Midgets. It was actually the home team based out of Williamsport, Virginia, which is where the tournament is held every year and has been held since then. And pictured up at the top left, that is the Maynard Midgets team that won in 1947. In 1951, it became an international event. There was a team from Canada that participated in the tournament, so that was a major step toward the type of competition that we see today. In 1957, the first international team to win the championship occurred. That team was from Mexico, so again, a big step toward the right direction to make this the international phenomenon that it is today. Some of the most success that teams have seen from 1969 to 1991, Taiwan won 15 of 23 championships, which is just ridiculous. That's almost on the level I would compare it to UConn women's basketball in the past several years, where they created a dynasty. And similar to that, Japan has won 5 of the last 8 championships in recent years. So it's not just in the distant past that we see these teams dominating. It's happening throughout history. The main reason why these international teams dominate is because their governments see it as a way to push for a change of their image. It looks better for them from a social standpoint and from an international viewpoint for them to be pushing for the success and the development of their youth in athletics, and really just stand for everything that Little League as an organization stands for. It's good for their image internationally. So now we'll just give some general information about the Little League World Series of Baseball. So, like I said before, each August it's held in Williamsport, Virginia. It's a very nice ballpark there. You can see the picture of it there on the left. It's usually a packed house for it, and it's a really big-time atmosphere for these younger athletes. It's one of 12 tournaments sponsored by Little League International. So Little League International was formerly known as Little League Baseball and Softball. As they've expanded, they changed their name, and I'll get to more about them in just a little bit. The first tournament, like I said, was 12 teams. We're now up to 16 teams participating in the tournament each year. They're 11 to 13 years old with very strict age restrictions for when these athletes' birthdays are and that type of thing. And the 16 teams are divided by region. So there's one team representing different regions from all around the world. So in terms of the bracket, it's a double elimination bracket, so you must lose twice in order to be knocked out of the tournament. The state tournaments decide who represents each region, so it's kind of like how high school sports are set up in the United States, where there's the sectional, regional, semi-state, state, so that you have that in each individual state, and then the state champion will face other state champions from their region, and the winner of that tournament will represent that region in the Little League World Series. So there's 8 United States regions and there's 8 international regions. Those will go on different sides of the bracket. The winner of the U.S. bracket will play the winner of the international bracket for the championship. So a little more about Little League International. It's the largest youth sport organization in the world, like I said earlier, over 2 million participants worldwide. And like I said before, there's 12 tournaments that they sponsor. It's not just Little League Baseball. That's why it's actually called the Little League World Series of Baseball, not just the Little League World Series. So within this, there's 5 baseball divisions, all based on age. There's 3 challenger programs, which are designed for youth athletes with disabilities, so it gives them an opportunity to participate on a bigger stage there. And then there are also 4 softball divisions, which are also based on age. So there's a lot of representation there, and it's really grown from the beginning, but really the biggest attraction right now anyway is still the Little League World Series of Baseball.
So I wanted to explain to you a little bit about what Little League governing bodies look like. They're very different than normal international entities, where generally international organizations have governments helping them, or committees, or board of directors, or anything along those lines that are a big organization that overlooks it. Whereas Little League has a very different take on what their governing bodies are. So they break it down into 3 levels, which is the local, district, and then regional and international level. And almost every single one of these levels has all volunteers that create them and organize them and make them run. The only one that's the exception is the regional and international level. That is the level at which their full-time employees are paid and run and operate the big events like the Little League World Series, and there's only about 110 paid employees. So if you think about how big Little League World Series is, it's actually a very tiny amount of people that get paid to help. The rest of them are volunteers who are willing to make this organization better. And so at the local level of their governing bodies, this level is where they create their own rules and create their own constitution so that they can have every youth participate in their specific communities. The district level is a little bit bigger than the local level, where it takes a bunch of those communities that are small in a larger area, and they take about 10 or 20 teams into the league, and there's only about 10 or 20 leagues within the district level. And then you get up to the international and regional level, which I was just talking about previously, and they oversee everything, which is a great way to break down such a beautiful organization, which I've come to experience and learn more about, which I've actually gotten a little more excited about as I learn more about it. And the other thing that I was supposed to look up was the issues and controversies. The craziest thing is, because of the way that Little League World Series is set up, I have found little to no controversy on the money side of things or the political side of the things. And I started to wonder, what truly was the controversy and the issue? And something I came across was people are unpleased with the age that youth are as they start this big time baseball playing. They think that it's hurting these youth who are under so much media attention, get to be on ESPN, get are asked for autographs. Like, they're little children who are growing up and developing their athleticism, and the majority of them probably end up not even making their high school teams. Like, so the controversy is where that fine line is between the right age and the proper age to create the best experience for the youth as they participate in the Little League World Series.
So now I'm going to discuss the role of marketing and sponsorship for the Little League World Series. There are 5 key factors I will cover for you today. We're going to start off with fan hospitality, and that is the idea that fans create fans. Many of the people who help to put on a great week for the event are volunteers, but these people will still go above and beyond to make sure everyone's experience is enjoyable. The reason they go back each year to volunteer is because they are truly excited to help. They are fans just as all the other people who attend. Second, we have fan access, and the idea with this one is that real connections create fans. That then leaves priceless memories to the lucky fans that attend. Being able to be up close to these Little League players will give an unexplainable experience to fans that attend because it's a more close-knit experience that you won't find at the professional or collegiate levels. Next, I will move on to fan mobility, and this proposes that comfort is key to experience, which allows for fans to roam freely around the grounds of the event with hardly any restrictions. It is a lot easier to get up and move around without any crowded areas, and you will not get lost because the complex is simple to maneuver around. Moving forward, we have fan attractions, and that is the concept believing that fan experience is made up of happenings. Lots of fans will come with their children and families, and sometimes they can become restless, so the Little League World Series has a load of activities for fans to engage in, such as bases to run while being timed and cages to see how fast you can pitch. Lastly, there is fan tradition, and it is believed that fans convert fans through the stories they tell. The Little League World Series contains many different traditions, which continues to draw in the fans year after year. Traditions all over inspire stories that people love to share.
So this first slide here is just to give you an idea of what the current total coverage of the Little League World Series is, and ESPN covered a record 140 games last year, nearly 300 hours of total coverage. You can see that they covered 15 softball games, 88 regional baseball games, 32 Little League World Series games in Williamsport alone, and 5 ancillary tournament games. So this second slide is just to talk about championship weekend from 2014 when the Little League World Series had their highest average number of viewers ever, which was just over 4,100,000. This is the highest they had had since 2002, so you can see it took a while for them to break their record. It's also a 36% increase from 2013, which is quite a big jump in numbers. Part of the reason for this was Mo'ne Davis, which I will get into later, but she was a female pitcher for one of the teams out of Pennsylvania, and it was the first time that a female pitcher had pitched in the Little League World Series and started a game. So that's why there was so much more national attention and why there was more average viewers, which would also correlate to why it has went down since 2014. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the airing rights as far as the Little League World Series is concerned and just who's kind of been in charge of that since the tournament has began back in the 50s. So CBS had the original airing rights for the first 60 years when the tournament first began, up until 1960 when ABC took over control of airing rights. And then in 2007, they kind of passed it on to ESPN until about 2015 when the tournament began to get too big and the coverage couldn't just be covered on one network. So they started using ESPN, ABC, and its affiliates through its new 2022 contract that they just signed with the Little League World Series, which was at a reported $7.5 million of revenue each year. So this slide, as I previously stated, is about Mo'ne Davis, who was a female pitcher in the Little League World Series in Pennsylvania. And just to give you an idea on how the media coverage may be getting to be a little too much when it comes to youth sports, as some people feel, there were 375 credentials for media handed out for the game when she was a starting pitcher, and I just feel almost 400 people to cover one story is a little excessive, and they're just going too far into this. Other people feel that the coverage is getting to be too much as well. She was put on news outlets doing interviews and on the cover of Sports Illustrated and even on Sports Science after the tournament that she played in. And people just think that this extra coverage is too much pressure on young athletes and not letting them enjoy the sport as much. Like, it's one thing to just cover it and get it out there so people can see it, but it's another to kind of put all this pressure on young athletes to perform. This slide is also to go along with the amount of pressure being put on young athletes. Danny Almonte was a 14-year-old boy back in 2001 whose parents lied about his age just so he could play in the Little League World Series. This just leads to more pressing issues in youth sports. Parents are just trying to put too much pressure on their children to perform and trying to live out their sport dreams through their children. Chad Finn from the Boston Globe feels that the media's role in this is just making it even worse, because as these kids are more publicized, then media is just taking advantage of this and blowing it up even more, and is getting a little bit out of control. He actually said that there's little doubt ESPN's enhancement of Williamsport importance contributes to the culture of which a fledgling athlete's achievements and disappointments can define them rather than inspire them. So, although the media coverage is good for young athletes and it's fun to watch the Little League World Series, it's getting to be to a point where it's starting to affect how these children develop and rule breaking, and it's starting to get a little bit out of control.